well by YouTube.
Hi, everybody. Just let me know, can you hear me? Somebody unmute themselves and tell me if you can hear me.
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah. So I'm going to give it another 2-3 minutes to let people join on, and then I'll start. And here's the only thing. I am not good at being able to read questions that you type into to Zoom while I'm talking. So what I'm going to ask is either in the middle or when I'm done, you can unmute yourself to ask a question, and then I'll answer it, and then mute yourself again, because that way I'll be able to answer any of the questions that you guys have without having to read them. When I have a mediator, it's much easier. Okay, so if you have questions, I did get one question on the phone. I will read that later. And I'll start in like 2 minutes. So, so that's what I'm going to ask you guys to do. Oh, also, this thing goes for 40 minutes. If we get cut off and I'm not done, or you still have more questions, or you want to talk further, then we can re-sign on the same Zoom number. You can just sign up again and we can reconnect. So, what time is it? All right, 1 more minute and then we'll get started. Okay, so I'm going to get started. Also, do me a favor. It's the first time I'm doing a Zoom from the school. If there's a disconnect, or if you're not hearing me, just somebody unmute yourselves and just let me know, okay? All right, so I'm going to get started. So sibling rivalry, it's funny. When I was telling the teachers that I was speaking on sibling rivalry today, they said, oh, that's your favorite topic. And I said, no, no, no. It is not my favorite topic. It is the parents. Just yourselves when you come on. Thanks. It is the parents' favorite topic. The parents love this topic because everybody deals with it. It doesn't matter how old your children are. It doesn't matter what the different years and ages are. All children have rivalry. And, you know, the question is why? Why can't they just get along? I've had parents say that to me all the time. Why can't they just get along? And the truth is that every child, maybe even every adult, wants to be the best loved. They want their parents to love them the most. And this wish makes jealousy in families inevitable. There has to be jealousy, because if each child wants to be the most loved, then there are going to be children that are feeling jealous of other children. The truth is that having a sibling teaches a very important life lesson. And that lesson is nobody is entitled to exclusive attention, and nobody gets all the advantages. And no matter what we do as parents, there will always be some competition. So there is a story that happened to a friend of mine when we had babies. She was pregnant with her second child, and Her first child, I think, was about 2.5 at the time. And she said to me, I'm reading books about the new baby and I am showing him pictures. And I really think he's going to be great when the baby's born. And then she had a little girl and the baby was born and she got a nurse. And the nurse was there for the first 2 weeks that the baby was born. And she said, she called me because I said to her when she told me that things were going to be great, I said, listen, don't build yourself up for it. It's very possible that he'll have a hard time, but it's okay. He'll figure it out. She called me like the first day that the baby came home. Oh my God, he wants to feed her. He's touching her foot. He's reading her stories. He loves her. And I said, great. She said, you see, you were so unsure that this was going to work, and it worked. And I did such a great job. And I was like, I'm so happy for you. And the day that the nurse left, she walked out of the apartment. The little boy ran after the nurse, screaming, wait, you forgot your baby. And from that point on, he acted like every other child who has a baby at home. So I love that story because it cracks me up. And no matter how much we prepare for a new baby, it's still going to be difficult when the child comes home. Okay, so how do we help children get along together? What's the secret in helping children get along together? I can tell you that we have to help children put their feelings into words, and we have to validate their feelings. Those of you who have heard me speak before know that my number one thing that I tell parents all the time is that we have to validate our children's feelings. Just mute yourselves, guys. So when your son complains that his sister isn't being nice to him, what you want to say is, wow, that wasn't a nice thing that your sister did. You must have been really upset with her. That doesn't mean you say, let's go tell your sister she was wrong. And it doesn't mean that you get angry at your son for not being able to toughen up and take it. You just validate what your child is saying so that your child understands that somebody gets him, that somebody gets what he's saying. Okay. Another thing I like to do, especially with young children, when they complain about something a brother or sister did, I really like to sort of give it in fantasy what it's not going to be in reality. Like, I wish I had a magic wand that I could put over your sister's head, or I wish I had fairy dust that I could put over your sister's head and make her treat you in a nicer way. So that, again, you wish you know, or even to say you wish that your brother treated you nicer. You wish your brother wanted to play with you more often. So you're giving the child what he really wants without being able to give the child what he wants. Is it the best thing? No, it's not the best thing, but it's the next best thing. Okay. You can also, and I find that this is really helpful with certain children, when you want them to be able to express how they're feeling about their siblings, there are kids that are really good at drawing. Have them draw you a picture. She wasn't nice to you. Draw a picture about how. And somehow getting that out in an artist way, in an artistic way, really, really helps the child be able to express it. They don't always have to express everything in words. Sometimes what I do is I'll say, tell me what happened. Let's write a story about it. Johnny was playing with his blocks, and Sabrina came in and she took his blocks, and Johnny got mad and threw the block at his sister's head, and Sabrina started to cry. Just write the story and then have your child draw a picture about it. Getting it out, you can't always fix it. We're not capable of fixing everything that happens with our children. And not only that, but sibling rivalry is not family rivalry. If you were having an argument with your spouse and your child came into the room and got involved in it, you would not be happy. You would say, get out of here. This is between mommy and daddy. Siblings have to be able to handle their own issues. If you think about it, sibling rivalry started with the first set of siblings in the Bible. Cain and Abel were the first siblings that we ever read about in the Torah, and they hated each other, and one killed the other. So when your kids are fighting, you can think to yourself, all right, but they're not as bad as Cain and Abel. And then if you go further down in the Torah, you have Joseph and his brothers, who, that was a horrible situation. They threw him in a pit. So siblings are not always nice to each other, but you're going to have to let them, under your guidance, you're going to have to let them be able to work through some of their own issues. You're not going to be able to change all of it. But there are things that you can do. For example, you can make a rule in your house that no one is allowed to call each other names. You're not making this rule for one child or a second child. You're making the rule in the house for parents too. Our rule is we never call each other names. That is not acceptable. And if you follow through with that rule, then it becomes something that's just used at home. It's not something about them. It's something about the house rules. Or you can make a rule about negative cursing, for example. We are in this house, we do not use curses. Not even about cursing somebody else, just make a rule in the house. So you're allowed to set up basic rules that need to be followed. Will they always be followed? It all depends on how consistent you are with following them yourself and with whatever consequences you decide are appropriate for those rules. But that's something that we can do to at least stop the negative behavior in the house. And we often heat up our children's rivalry when we compare them. So what I found when my kids were younger, and it's hilarious because they do this to me now, I used to say things like, I have two sons, Josh and Eric, and I used to say, you're my favorite 5-year-old son named Josh with blue eyes who loves basketball and loves playing Ninja Turtles. And then to Eric, I would say, you're my favorite son named Eric with green eyes who loves to do math and loves to play with Legos. And as they got older, I individualized it for them as they got older. And they still remember it. Now, of course, they make fun of me about it, but they still remember it. And recently I said something to one of them, because with COVID, I haven't been able to be indoors with my grandchildren. So I recently said something like, this is so frustrating. I want to be indoors with them already. I want you to spend a Shabbos. And one of my sons said, well, it's not like we're going to my in-laws either. And I said, I'm not comparing. And he said, but I want you to know you're my favorite mom with blue eyes who works in a school. And I'm like, okay, you know what? Shut up. I don't want to hear this from you. But at least what I got from that, all these years later, they internalized it, and it's other thing that I found that really helps, and we don't realize we're even doing it. We work so hard to be able to praise our children and to give them, you want to tell them things that they do well and things that they do right. But something we don't always take into consideration is where we tell them. So what do I mean by that? When you're sitting with 2 or more or all of your children, can you hear me? I just got a sign that said my internet is unstable. Can you guys hear me? Somebody unmute and tell me. Guys, is anyone there?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great, thank you. I feel like I'm talking to air. So when you want to compliment your child, and I believe very highly in complimenting for real compliments, don't make stuff up, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But when you want to compliment your child, do it privately. And I'll tell you what I did that was a mistake. I have one son who's very, very good in math, and we constantly say, oh my God, you're so good in math, you're so smart in math, you're so smart in math. And my other son was good in math, he just wasn't as good. And my other son one day said, yeah, I know, I'm not so good in math. I know he's really good in math. What I realized was because I was, guys, mute yourselves, because I was saying it to him in front of my other son, he felt like he wasn't good. So be very careful when you say something in front of another child. The second child who you're not giving the compliment to may feel lesser. So be careful where you give your compliments. Okay. Let's see. You want to also, I think, yeah, Monica, put on your mute because we can hear. Okay, thank you. Okay. You want to make sure that you individualize for your children. So we don't love equally. We love uniquely. You love your child for who they are as a unique individual. We don't love our children the same. It's like saying, who do you love more, your husband or your mother? Who do you love more, your daughter or your father? We can't compare love. Every person we love is loved for who they are, and it's a different kind of love for each person. So make it individualized and make it unique. How do we do that? As I know it's tough when you have more than 1 or 2 or 3 children, you need to find ways to spend individual time with each of your children. And I don't want to make it impossible for you. It could be 10 or 15 minutes once or twice a week. If you have more time than that, even better. But you need to give each of them their own time. Personally, I feel that the oldest children should be able to stay up later just as a reward for being the oldest. And so if an older child gets an extra 15 or 20 minutes to stay up later than their sibling, that can be the time that you spend with them, that you talk to them, that your conversation is for them. If you have younger children that are home while your older ones are in school, hopefully not Zooming all day long, then you have that time with your younger child. So you have to figure it out logistically, but individual time with your child goes, you can't even imagine how long it goes. It goes such a long way. And when I say individual time, you have to put your phones away. So I was walking recently, I walk in a park with a friend of mine, and we were walking in a park, and there was a mom and her daughter sitting on a bench in the park. They walked into the park and they sat down together. So it's like a loop. So the first time we went around, I actually said to my friend, wow, it's so nice to see a mom and her daughter, must have been about 8 or 9 years old, sitting together and chatting and spending time together. I said, I'm like, it's revitalizing my belief in parenting. And then we came around the second loop around, they were both sitting on the bench on their phones. And I said, oh, well, yeah, that's pretty much what I expect. Excuse me. So when you are with your child and when you're spending the individual time, and the reason for the individual time is to try to lessen that competition and jealousy, put your phones away. Because if you're just checking your texts or if you're just checking your social media, you are not giving undivided time to that child, and your children need at least some undivided time. Okay. I would also say that if possible, try to have separate activities for your kids. So if you have one child who loves art and you have another one who loves ice skating, let them develop themselves in their own unique way. If you have 2 kids who like the same thing, that's fine, but try to figure out what your child's passion is and let them be involved with their passion, as opposed to sticking them in the same class because it's convenient and you can get them both there at the same time, and it just makes it easier. So another way to not have them competing all the time is to have them have their strengths in different areas, and it decreases the competition. Okay. Another thing that I love to do with siblings is to reward cooperation. And where did I learn this? I used to work in an elementary school, and one of the teachers, what she did, she had the kids sitting in group tables, and she would say, when everyone at the group finishes their project, you're going to get a stick. She gave them like medicine sticks, and at a certain number of sticks, whichever table collected 20 sticks would have would get ice cream for that group. And so what it basically did was it instilled in them cooperation. So if one child was done and another child was still working on something, the child that was done would help the child that was still working on something, because it made the whole group work faster. It's the same thing with kids. I'm going to put on a timer for 10 minutes. If you guys can finish cleaning up the room before the timer rings, you're going to get a special dessert tonight for dinner, after dinner. So they are then being encouraged to work together to get a like reward that they're both interested in. And it's amazing how well children will work together in order to get something. So again, it's a way to encourage cooperation and get them to be more involved with each other in a positive way. Okay. All right, let's see. Okay, so sometimes what I said here was that sometimes it's nice to treat your child as if they're an only child, that making the separate time for them really is such a nice thing to do. And not only to do the separateness, but to try to even give them a separate place to work, to meet. Sometimes what children love is, now it's harder because of COVID, but taking them to Dunkin' Donuts and getting them a hot chocolate and just sitting together for half an hour and doing that. One of the things I remember still from when I was younger, my mom twice a year, once in the spring and once in the fall, she would take me out of school for a day to take me shopping for clothes for school. And I still remember the specialness of those days. We would go shopping, we would go for lunch, and the fact that I wasn't in school, or sometimes she took me out for half a day, but it was just so special, and it made me feel, wow, she's spending her day off with me. I must be important to her. So these are all little things we can give our children to make them feel important. The truth is, there's enough love for every child. If they get your attention, they don't need to fight for it. Okay. Let's see. 1 second. Okay. Now, how to encourage sharing. So I get this all the time. My kids don't play nicely together. I can't leave them alone. They're always telling on each other. It's impossible to leave them alone. My older one is always bothering the younger one, and the younger one is always crying. So first of all, let me tell you, younger children learn, it's a learned response. They learn that when their older sibling bothers them and they cry, their parents will come to their rescue. So basically, we are teaching our younger siblings to cry, and then we will rescue them. And the truth is that younger siblings do things to their older siblings that we don't always see, we don't always know, and we end up getting the older siblings in trouble because the assumption is they're the ones who were responsible. And I'll give you an example. I once had a mother bring her 2 children into me complaining about the fact that they always fight. The girl was 12 and the boy was 9. And when the mother brought them in, she said, my son complains all the time. No, excuse me. My son hits my daughter all the time, and she is my angel, and she doesn't do anything, and she doesn't deserve to be hit. So I made sure that mom left my office, go home, go away. And I said to the boy, is it true what your mom said? do you hit your sister? And he said, yes. And I said, huh, why do you hit your sister? And he said, she looks at me. And I said, she looks at you? And he said, yeah, she looks at me and she makes me so mad. And I hit her. And I said to the girl, do you look at him? And she said, no, I don't even know what he's talking about. So, okay, I let it go. And we started to play a game. And the boy won the game. And the girl looked at him. I was privy to the look. And for the most part, she was saying F you to him in that look. So he might be hitting her, but she's hitting him with her face. She's looking at him and hitting him. And so I said to him when I saw the look, I said, is that the look? And he said, yes. And I said, wow, I understand why you hit her. From now on, when she looks at you like that, you have my permission to hit her. And guess what? She stopped looking at him. So what happens is we don't always see what both are doing. I can guarantee that both of your kids are involved with fighting with each other. Now, I'm not talking about like under 15 or 16 months. That's we're going to deal with a little differently. But when you have children who are 2 and older, that 2-year-old is pinching or taking something and getting under the older child's skin. And so when you always punish the older child and the older child always says, but I didn't do anything, they're telling the truth. Often it's not them who's really responsible. So what do I do? What do I think is the right thing? When your children are fighting and one comes and says, he did this, and one comes and says, she did that, and you were not there and you didn't see, you say to them, and these are the words you can use, Mommy did not see, I cannot listen to you, and I cannot listen to you because I wasn't there. If you cannot start to play nicely together, Mommy's going to have to put you in separate rooms. You're not getting mad at one. You're not getting mad at the other. You're explaining that if they're not going to figure it out, you are going to separate them. And you put on a timer for, 5-6 minutes, and you make sure that they don't talk to each other and they don't play together and they don't look at each other. And then you allow them to play again. And if it happens again, you do the same thing again. Are there any questions to this point? I figured I should ask. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Okay, I'm going to go on then. Okay, so you don't want to show favoritism to one or the other. And when you're not there, you don't know necessarily what happens. If you're sitting in the den and you see one child literally pulling something out of the other child's hands, you can take that toy back and say, you really wanted that toy, validate, you really wanted that toy, but your sister had it now. Let's have changing time in 3 minutes and use the timer. If you use the timer fairly consistently, your children will learn that the timer actually tells the truth because it's not in a little while, it's not soon, it's not later. It actually rings when it's supposed to. So that's something you can do to help with taking turns. If you have, somebody asked me this morning that they have a 1-year-old and their 4-year-old child has been very physical with the 1-year-old. The 1-year-old started walking recently. And so the 4-year-old is starting to get a little ticked off because she's taking her toys and she's annoying her. If something like that is a situation, what you do is you pick up the baby and you say, Mommy needs to keep the baby safe and you're not playing so nicely with her. So I'm going to take her into the other room. And you're sort of, okay, we have 10 minutes, guys. I just got the 10-minute notice. So I don't know how to turn that off. Okay. I don't know why it's, okay. All right. I see that. So we can reconnect at some point. Okay, so that's what you do. You pick up the baby, you keep the baby safe, you let the older child know it's mommy's job to keep all of you safe, and I have to take her into the other room now because the way you're playing with her is a little too rough, and I'm going to try to keep her, I'm going to keep her safe. Okay. When you're trying to get them to share, you want to point out the advantages to sharing. If you have one video game and you have a video game, and if you share them, you get 2 video games. I used to work with a man who would buy each of his children their own, whatever it was, whether it was a toy, a video game, and he said to me, well, I don't want them to have to share it because if they want it, I want them to be able to use it as soon as they want it. And that to me is the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard. You want to encourage sharing, not discourage sharing. You want your children to want to spend time together and do things together, not make them not want to. You also want them to be ready to share. So what do I mean by that? So first of all, your children don't have to share all their toys. I think it's really, really important for some children, for all children, to have some toys that are theirs. So let's say you have, I don't know, a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 4-year-old. Each of them can take 3 or 4 or 5 of their things, and they are not things that anybody else is to share unless they choose to share it. And you put those things in their room, in their closet. The only rule is when you play with that or when you use that, you cannot use it when the other children are around. If you want it to be a private toy, you have to use it when you're by yourself. So you can use it in your room, you can use it in mommy's room if there's nobody there, but you are not allowed to use it when everybody is around. So you don't have to share everything because there are some things that are special and they don't want to share all their things, and that's okay. So that's what you do about that. Also, sometimes you have to wait for a child to be ready to share. So sometimes, let's say a child gets a goodie bag from a birthday party, and they come home from the birthday party, and the second child says, I want some, I want some, I want some. And the other child doesn't want to give it over. What you can say is, you know what? She just got this from the birthday party. Let's give her a few minutes, and then I bet she's going to be ready to share. And by saying that, you're really planting an idea in your child's head. Of course, what you're saying to the child is you really want them to share, but you're not saying share your candy. You're saying, I know your sister is so kind and so wonderful and so sweet, and I know she's going to want to share her candy with you, but let's give her a few minutes to be ready. 9 out of 10 times, that sister will share her candy. And then you can say, what a wonderful sister. What a good sharing sister you are. And that's another thing. When you want to compliment regarding siblings, you want to make sure that you're specifically saying, you are such a good brother. Not you're a good kid, not you're nice, but very specific. You're such a good brother for giving your sister that. My newest granddaughter, who is now 10 months old, has I have 2 granddaughters, siblings. So Emma is the oldest, and Isabel, we call her Izzy, is the younger one. And somebody's not muted. Mute yourselves, guys. And Emma is so kind to Izzy, and she'll always like give her pacifier, or she'll share a toy with her. And my son and daughter-in-law are great, and they're always saying, Emma, what a good sharing sister you are. Look at Izzy smiling. You made her so happy. That is so nice. So you want to be very, very specific in your praise, that because they did that, it made them a wonderful, wonderful sibling. And when they do share, make sure that you show your appreciation. You know what? You guys did such good sharing. Thank you so much for being such good sharers. Come here. Now you're both going to get a cookie. And I'm not saying it always has to be rewarded. Sometimes the words are enough, but it's really, really very nice to reward them when they share and when they do something nicely. Also, as you know, in addition to validating, one of my big, big things that I tell you guys all the time is modeling is the most important way that you're going to teach anything to your children. Model sharing. Model it with your spouse. Model it with your other kids. Model it with your family members. There's only one cookie left. It's mommy's favorite cookie, but I'm going to share it with all of you. And that is a very huge, loud message that you're going to give to a child, because if you can share something that you really wanted for yourself, then they can share something that they. Okay. You guys back? Okay. All right. I think we're good now for another 40 minutes. I don't know that we'll go that long, but we'll keep. Oh, you all came back. Thank you. That makes me feel so good. You're all here. Yay. Okay. What I was going to talk about next is tattling. I hate tattling. I hate it in school. I hate it with kids. I hate tattling. I kind of don't want you to listen to tattling. The only time that you really should listen is if somebody is getting hurt, if there's a safety issue, if somebody runs and says, hurry up, he's jumping off the couch and he's falling on his head, then yes, listen to the tattling. But when your kids come to you and say, he did this and she did that, I had mentioned this earlier, the more you listen, the more they're going to say it. Tattling is for the parents to get you involved. And I don't want you involved. I want you to hand ownership of your children's issues with each other, hand it over to your children. So you can say, so if okay, let's get an example. One child comes and says, I was playing and he took my toys. And the other child comes and says, I wanted some of, why should he get all the toys? I wanted some of them also. So what you can do, don't get involved, you can validate. You can say, so you're really upset because he took your toys, and you're really upset because he wouldn't give you toys. Huh. What's something that you guys think you can do to make this better? And then step away. And most of the time, not always, but most of the time, your kids will figure out a solution by themselves without you being involved, without you giving attention for the negative behavior, which is never a positive thing. They're going to figure out what to do. And really, isn't that the goal of being a parent? Is to hand the reins over to our children so that they know what to do in different situations. Not for you to tell them, but for them to figure it out under your tutelage, under your guidance, but for them to figure it out. If you don't react to what your kids tell you, then they're not getting the reaction they want and they will tattle less. When you say, you know, I'm not really comfortable with you telling me about your brother, but if you want to tell me something about yourself, I'd be really happy to listen. We had an issue with tattling in my old school, and something that we did, and actually I just told one of the nursery teachers to do this in her class, we put a picture of